The biting chill of late December seeped through the thin walls of the dilapidated suburban house, a cold comfort compared to the icy hostility radiating from within. It was Christmas Eve, a night meant for warmth and wonder, but for Alara Vance and her 3 small children, it had become a brutal tableau of betrayal. Her sister, Serena Thorne, stood silhouetted against the brightly lit doorway of the living room, her face a mask of contempt, her expensive silk robe a stark contrast to Alara's worn sweater. "Get out, Alara." Serena's voice, usually dripping with false sweetness for company, was now sharp, devoid of any pretense. "I told you, your time here is up. This is my house now, my inheritance, and I won't have you and your brats sullying it any longer." Alara clutched her youngest, 3-year-old Chloe, tighter to her chest. 6-year-old Maya whimpered, burying her face into Alara's side, while 8-year-old Leo, usually so boisterous, stood rigid, his small fists clenched, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. The meager belongings they had managed to salvage were piled around their feet, a few worn suitcases, a tattered blanket, a small box of children's books. The house, once filled with the echoes of their parents' laughter, now felt like a tomb, after their parents' sudden, tragic death in a car accident 6 months prior. Alara had returned from out of state, bringing her own profound grief and the heavy burden of her new widowhood. Her husband, Thomas, a kind but struggling artist, had passed away unexpectedly just a year before, leaving Alara with 3 small children and a mountain of medical debt. She had come seeking solace, family, and perhaps a share of the inheritance that was rightfully theirs. Instead, she found Serena, transformed by greed into a venomous stranger. Serena, with her predatory charm and calculated manipulations, had systematically stripped Alara of everything. First, she convinced Alara to sign over her share of their parents' investment portfolio, claiming it was for tax purposes and easier management, promising Alara a substantial allowance. Then, she had subtly coerced Alara into relinquishing her claim to their childhood home, framing it as a temporary arrangement until Alara could get back on her feet. Alara, heartbroken and emotionally vulnerable from her double loss, had trusted her sister, blind to the malevolence festering beneath Serena's polished exterior. Now, that trust lay shattered, trampled underfoot like the discarded wrapping paper in Serena's opulent living room. The allowance had never materialized. The promises had evaporated. And on this coldest of nights, Serena was making good on her threat. "But Serena," Alara's voice was hoarse, raw with suppressed tears. "It's Christmas Eve, and it's freezing outside. Where will we go? The shelter won't have space tonight." Serena laughed, a cold, brittle sound that sent shivers down Alara's spine. "That's not my problem, darling sister. You should have thought of that before you came here with your impoverished little family. You're a burden, Alara. Always have been. Now, get out, or I'll call the police." Her words were a physical blow, stripping away the last vestiges of Alara's hope for reconciliation. Alara looked at her children, their small faces pale with fear, their eyes fixed on their aunt's cruel smile. This was not the environment for them. This was poison. With a newfound resolve, Alara tightened her grip on Chloe, straightened her shoulders, and met Serena's icy gaze. "Fine," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "We'll go. But don't think for a moment that this is over. Serena, you may have taken our inheritance, but you won't take our dignity, and you will regret this." Serena merely sneered, a flicker of triumph in her eyes. Threats. How quaint. Run along. Alara, find yourself a nice bridge to sleep under. Or perhaps, the garage will suffice. She gestured dismissively towards the detached garage at the side of the house, a dark, unheated structure filled with old lawnmowers and forgotten tools. Alara didn't respond. She simply turned, her back to the illuminated house and the sister who had betrayed her, and led her children into the biting cold. Leo, seeing her determination, bravely picked up the small box of books. Maya, still clutching her mother's hand, kept her head down, her small body trembling. The garage was a cavern of dampness and shadows. The air inside was thick with the smell of gasoline and dust. A single, bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting a weak, yellowish glow. It was far from a refuge. It was a prison of their immediate despair. Alara found a relatively clean spot amidst the clutter, spread out the tattered blanket, and huddled with her children, wrapping them tightly, trying to transfer some of her own body heat into their shivering forms. Chloe, too young to fully comprehend the depth of their predicament, whimpered, "Mommy, I'm cold. When can we go inside?" Alara pressed a kiss to her daughter's head. "Soon, baby. Very soon. Just a little while longer. Mommy will keep you warm." Her voice was a soothing balm, though her own teeth chattered. She pulled Maya and Leo closer, feeling their small, fragile bodies pressed against hers. She stared into the darkness beyond the single, dusty window of the garage, the grand house looming like a malevolent specter in the distance. The sounds of muffled Christmas carols and distant laughter from inside reached her, a cruel counterpoint to their shivering silence. A bitter, cold fury began to simmer beneath her despair. Serena had stripped her of everything, but she would not break her spirit. Not while her children depended on her. Alara, a woman who had faced the sudden death of her loving husband, the crushing weight of medical debt, and the betrayal of her own sister, found a steel core within her. She was not a victim. She was a survivor. And for her children, she would fight. She would find a way out of this nightmare. She would find justice. The hours crawled by. The cold was relentless. Chloe eventually cried herself to sleep, curled against Alara's chest. Maya, shivering, huddled close, her little body tense. Leo, surprisingly, remained awake, his eyes wide, occasionally glancing at the garage door, as if expecting a miracle. Alara closed her eyes, trying to block out the cold, trying to block out the searing pain of betrayal. She focused on the warmth of her children's breath against her skin, the fragile heartbeat of their shared survival. She pictured her parents' faces, their kind smiles, the memories of a time when their family was whole and loving. She would honor their memory. She would not let Serena's cruelty define their future. A faint rumbling sound pierced the silence of the night. It grew steadily louder, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through the very concrete floor of the garage. It wasn't the familiar roar of a passing truck or the distant wail of a siren. It was something else, something smoother, more powerful. Closer. Alara's eyes snapped open. Leo stirred beside her, his head lifting. Maya, roused by the unfamiliar sound, whimpered softly. The rumble intensified, coming to a soft, almost imperceptible halt just outside the garage door. Alara held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. What now had Serena called the police? Or something worse? A brilliant beam of light, sharp and precise, cut through the darkness of the garage, momentarily blinding her. It was the powerful headlights of a vehicle, positioned directly outside the large garage door. Then, the distinct sound of a car door opening, a soft thud, and footsteps, slow and deliberate, crunching on the gravel outside. Alara pulled her children closer, her gaze fixed on the garage door, her instincts screaming danger. Her mind raced through every possible scenario, every worst-case outcome. She was alone, vulnerable, utterly exposed in this desolate space. Then, a knock. Not a violent bang, but a polite, measured rap on the metal door. Alara's breath hitched. Who could it be? She slowly, cautiously, pushed herself up, her muscles stiff from the cold. Her children huddled behind her, peering out from behind her legs. She took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "Who's there?" Alara called out, her voice surprisingly steady, betraying none of the fear that gripped her. A voice, deep and resonant, responded from the other side. "Mrs. Alara Vance." "My name is Silas. I have been sent to collect you and your children. A luxury limousine awaits." Alara froze. A luxury limousine here now. After everything she had endured, after being cast out into the cold, a bizarre, almost unbelievable proposition had just arrived at her doorstep. It was utterly inexplicable. A sudden, surreal twist in the nightmare of her Christmas Eve. The chilling pronouncement from beyond the garage door hung heavy in the frigid night air. A luxury limousine. Here now. It defied all logic, all the bitter reality that had just consumed Elara Vance's life. Her mind, reeling from Serena Thorne's brutal eviction, struggled to process the surreal announcement. Mrs. Elara Vance. The voice from outside repeated, calm and professional, yet with an undeniable authority. My name is Silas. I have been sent to collect you and your children, per the instructions of a private will. The vehicle awaits. Elara's instincts screamed caution. She was a woman who had learned the hard way that promises of unexpected fortune often hit a sharper blade. Her parents, gone too soon, had left a tangled web of financial dealings that Serena had exploited with ruthless efficiency. Her late husband, Thomas, though kind, had left her with nothing but love and insurmountable debt. This sudden appearance felt like a trap, another cruel twist in a night already overflowing with despair. Yet, as she peered through the dusty, grimy window of the garage, she saw it a sleek, obsidian limousine, its polished surface gleaming under the distant streetlights. It was undeniably real. And standing beside it was a man, tall and impeccably dressed in a dark chauffeur's uniform, his posture ramrod straight, his expression unreadable beneath the brim of his cap. He looked less like a potential threat and more like an apparition from a world she no longer inhabited. Her children stirred behind her. Leo, always perceptive, whispered, "Mommy, what's happening? Is it Santa?" His young voice, filled with a fragile hope, pierced through Elara's cynicism. Maya, her eyes wide, clutched Elara's sweater, while Chloe, still half asleep and shivering, burrowed deeper into her chest. Elara looked at their small, trusting faces, lit by the faint glow of the garage bulb. They were cold, hungry, and utterly vulnerable. Any alternative, no matter how unbelievable, felt like a desperate lifeline. "Please open the door, Mrs. Vance." Silas's voice was patient, firm. "We are on a schedule." With a deep, shaky breath, Elara made a decision. She had nothing left to lose. Serena had ensured that. If this was a trap, she would face it with the same quiet defiance she had shown her sister. But if it was a chance, however slim, however unbelievable, to give her children warmth and safety, she would seize it. She unlatched the heavy garage door, the metal groaning in protest. The cold night air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of exhaust and damp earth. Silas stood directly in front of them, his presence commanding. He was an older man, perhaps in his late 60s, with kind but weary eyes that held a hint of profound sadness, as if he carried the weight of many silent stories. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his gaze settling on her, then sweeping over the huddled children. "It is a pleasure to finally meet you. My name is Silas. I am the executor of the late Mr. Harrison Vance's will. He specifically requested your presence." Elara's brow furrowed in confusion. Harrison Vance. The name struck no chord. It wasn't a relative she knew, nor a business associate of her parents or husband. "Harrison Vance," she repeated, her voice laced with suspicion. "I don't know anyone by that name." Silas offered a small, polite smile. "Perhaps not directly, ma'am. But Mr. Vance was a man of considerable connections. He knew a great deal about your family's circumstances, and he left specific instructions for you and your children to be brought to his estate immediately upon his passing." He gestured to the limousine. "We should depart. It is a long journey, and the night is growing colder." Elara hesitated, her mind racing. An unknown benefactor, a massive estate. It sounded like something out of a fantastical story. But Silas's demeanor, his quiet authority, felt genuine. And the warmth radiating from the opened limousine door was an undeniable lure. "Mommy, can we go?" Maya whispered, her eyes wide with curiosity, no longer trembling. Leo, emboldened, ventured a step forward, peering into the plush interior of the limousine. Elara made her choice. "All right, Mr. Silas," she said, her voice firm, masking the turmoil within. "We'll come, but I demand to know everything once we arrive. No more mysteries." "That is Mr. Vance's intention, ma'am," Silas replied, his voice a soft reassurance. He then, with surprising gentleness, helped Alara settle Chloe into the limousine's soft leather seat. He then carefully assisted Maya and Leo, ensuring they were comfortable. Their small faces were etched with wonder as they sank into the luxurious upholstery, their previous fears momentarily forgotten. As Alara stepped into the vehicle, the door closing silently behind her, the outside world, the cold garage, the imposing house, the bitter memory of Serena's cruelty vanished. The interior of the limousine was a haven of warmth and opulent comfort. Soft light illuminated plush seating, a small refreshment bar, and state-of-the-art climate control. It was a stark, almost dizzying contrast to the desperate cold she had just endured. The limousine pulled away with an almost imperceptible hum, gliding smoothly down the street. Alara watched through the tinted windows as Serena's brightly lit house, once a symbol of family and warmth, receded into the distance, shrinking into a cold, dark dot in the night. A wave of exhaustion, emotional and physical, washed over her. She leaned back, holding Chloe protectively, listening to the soft, amazed whispers of Leo and Maya as they explored the luxurious interior. The journey was long, stretching through the remainder of the night and into the early hours of Christmas morning. Silas drove with quiet competence, navigating sprawling highways, and then, as dawn broke, winding country roads that led deeper into a secluded, heavily wooded area. Alara, despite her exhaustion, remained alert, her gaze fixed on the passing landscape. She was acutely aware of her vulnerability, a single mother with 3 small children, utterly at the mercy of this mysterious benefactor. As the sun began to climb higher, casting a pale gold light over the winter landscape, the limousine finally turned off the main road onto a long, private driveway. The gate, made of intricate wrought iron, swung open silently, revealing a meticulously maintained gravel path flanked by towering, ancient oak trees. The path wound upwards, past manicured lawns that stretched seemingly endlessly, until a grand structure emerged from behind a copse of trees. It was a sprawling, majestic estate, built of dark, rough-hewn stone, adorned with elegant gables and towering chimneys. It was a castle, a fortress, a relic of a bygone era, yet it exuded an undeniable sense of quiet power and enduring grace. This was not merely a large house, it was a testament to generations of wealth and prestige. This was Blackwood Manor. The limousine glided to a silent halt before the imposing front entrance. The massive oak doors, adorned with intricate carvings, stood like silent sentinels. As Silas opened the limousine door, a figure emerged from the shadows of the doorway. She was an elderly woman, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her face etched with a tapestry of wrinkles that spoke of a long life lived. Her eyes, however, were remarkably bright and discerning, holding a gentle warmth that immediately put Alara at ease. This was Agnes, the housekeeper. Silas had mentioned in passing. "Welcome, Mrs. Vance." Agnes's voice was soft, compassionate, yet with an underlying strength. "And welcome, my dear children. We've been expecting you. Please, come inside. It's warm, and we have breakfast waiting." Alara, her heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and awe, stepped out of the limousine. The sheer scale of the manor was breathtaking. It felt like stepping into another world, a world light years away from the cold garage and Serena's cruel dismissal. Agnes approached them, her gaze filled with genuine tenderness as she looked at the children. She extended a hand to Maya, who shyly took it, a hesitant smile touching her lips. Agnes led them inside, into a grand foyer illuminated by the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. The air was warm, fragrant with the scent of wood smoke and freshly baked bread. As Alara walked through the vast, echoing halls, past soaring ceilings and ornate tapestries, a profound sense of disbelief washed over her. Just hours ago, she had been huddled in a frigid garage, facing an uncertain future with her children, feeling utterly abandoned. Now she was in a mansion, a castle, welcomed by strangers who spoke of a mysterious benefactor. She looked at her children's faces. Leo's jaw was dropped in silent awe, his eyes wide as he took in the grandeur. Maya was already chatting animatedly with Agnes, her fear replaced by childish wonder. Chloe, still sleepy, simply nestled contentedly in Alara's arms. The immediate relief of warmth and safety was overwhelming. But beneath it, a torrent of questions churned in Alara's mind. Who was Harrison Vance? Why had he left everything to her? A stranger. What intricate web of connections had led her from the depths of despair to the opulent grandeur of Blackwood Manor? And what secrets did this silent, imposing estate hold about her family's past? And about the man who had so unexpectedly changed their destiny? The mystery of her new reality was just beginning to unfold. The grandeur of Blackwood Manor was not merely aesthetic. It was an immersive experience. The sheer scale of the estate, nestled deep within a secluded valley in upstate New York, dwarfed anything Alara Vance had ever imagined. The cold, desperate fear of the garage, and the humiliation inflicted by Serena Thorne, now felt like a distant nightmare, replaced by a surreal sense of disbelief. Agnes, the manor's seasoned housekeeper, with her gentle demeanor and knowing eyes, became their initial guide. She led Alara and the children, Leo, Maya, and Chloe, through labyrinthine hallways adorned with priceless tapestries and ancestral portraits. Sunlight streamed through tall, arched windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, hinting at centuries of history contained within these walls. The children, initially awestruck into silence, soon found their voices, their excited whispers echoing through the vast spaces. Their new living quarters were a revelation, a spacious wing of the manor dedicated entirely to them. Each child had their own exquisitely furnished bedroom, complete with a private bathroom, toys, and books that seemed to materialize as if by magic. Alara's own suite was a sanctuary of calm, a stark contrast to the cramped, familiar clutter she had left behind. Soft rugs cushioned their steps, and the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers replaced the stale air of their former lives. Mr. Vance desired that you all be comfortable. Mrs. Vance, Agnes explained softly as she showed Alara to her suite. He left very specific instructions for your care. Anything you need, simply ask. Despite the lavish comfort, Alara felt a deep-seated unease. This opulent reality felt borrowed, tenuous. Who was Harrison Vance? This mysterious benefactor. What was his connection to her family, and why had he chosen her, a struggling widow cast out by her own sister, to inherit such immense wealth? The questions gnawed at her, preventing her from fully embracing this sudden turn of fortune. Silas, the impeccably dressed chauffeur and executor of the will, arrived later that morning in Alara's private sitting room. He carried a heavy leather-bound briefcase, its contents surely holding the answers Alara so desperately sought. He poured her a cup of fragrant herbal tea, his movements precise and deferential, yet his presence exuded an unspoken authority. Mrs. Vance, Silas began, his voice calm. Professional. I understand you have many questions. I am here to provide the answers Mr. Vance entrusted to me. He opened the briefcase, revealing a stack of documents, neatly organized. Harrison Vance was your maternal grandfather. Mrs. Vance, Silas stated, watching for her reaction. He was your mother's biological father, from whom she was estranged for many decades. Alara's breath hitched. Her grandfather, her mother, Eleanor, had rarely spoken of her family before marrying Alara's father, Arthur Vance. She had only vague recollections of whispers about a wealthy, estranged relative, but the details were always murky, dismissed as unimportant. My grandfather, Alara whispered, the words barely audible. But my mother never spoke of him. Not truly. Indeed, Silas affirmed, his gaze softening. Mr. Vance was a man of immense wealth and influence, but also of great personal sorrow. He and your mother had a profound disagreement many years ago, stemming from her choice to marry your father, Arthur. Mr. Vance believed your father, though a good man, was not ambitious enough for his daughter, and feared he would not provide her with the life Mr. Vance believed she deserved. It was a classic tale of old money versus new aspirations. Their estrangement became absolute, a source of lifelong regret for Mr. Vance. Silas produced a faded photograph from the briefcase, a younger Eleanor, radiant and smiling, standing beside a stern-faced but clearly proud Harrison Vance. Alara felt a pang of unexpected emotion. She had never seen this side of her mother's past. Despite the estrangement, Silas continued, his voice laced with emotion. Mr. Vance never stopped loving your mother. He kept a discreet watch over her, and later, over you. He was aware of your family's struggles after your parents' passing, and of your husband's illness, and his unfortunate death. Alara felt a flush of indignation. He knew we were struggling, and he did nothing. Silas's expression grew somber. Mr. Vance was a man of his time. Mrs. Vance, proud, perhaps stubborn. He believed in earning one's way. He also had a very specific vision for his legacy. He wanted to ensure his fortune, built over generations, would go to a truly deserving heir, one who embodied the true values of the Vance lineage: integrity, resilience, and strength of character. He watched you from afar. He saw your struggles, your unwavering devotion to your children. He saw your strength when you lost your husband, and he saw your sister's true colors after your parents' death. Silas then presented a series of documents, their legal jargon dense, yet the implications were clear. Harrison Vance had established a complex, irrevocable trust, leaving the bulk of his colossal fortune, properties, investments, and Blackwood Manor itself to Alara and her children. The will explicitly stated that the inheritance would only be transferred upon his death, and specifically after Alara had faced the ultimate test of character and adversity. His death had occurred 2 weeks prior, and Serena's cruel act in the garage had, ironically, triggered the final clause of the will. Your sister, Serena, knew none of this, Silas explained, his voice devoid of judgment. She believed she was entitled to everything through her manipulations of your parents' less secure assets. She was merely a beneficiary of a minor, separate trust, which she exhausted years ago. She had no claim to the true Vance legacy. Alara felt a surge of mixed emotions: relief, overwhelming gratitude, but also a profound sorrow for the missed connection with her grandfather. He had been there all along, watching, silently preparing this lifeline. My parents, Alara said, her voice shaking. Did they know about this trust about my grandfather? Silas shook his head. They did not. Mr. Vance kept it a closely guarded secret. He feared that if Eleanor knew, her pride would prevent her from accepting it. He wanted his legacy to be a clean slate for you, unburdened by past family feuds. This revelation was both a balm and a new wound. It explained so much, yet created new questions. It also fueled a quiet, burning anger. Serena's deceit, her calculated cruelty, was not just against Alara, but against the memory of their parents, against the true legacy that had always been destined for Alara. As days turned into weeks, life at Blackwood Manor settled into a rhythm of luxurious comfort and genuine care. Agnes, a true matriarch, provided a warm, loving presence for the children, who thrived in their new environment. Leo, once withdrawn, discovered the sprawling library and its endless collection of adventure books. Maya, ever the artist, found solace in the Manor's art studio, filled with paints and canvases. Chloe, blossoming in the secure environment, explored the vast manicured gardens, her laughter ringing freely. Alara, however, couldn't fully relax. The opulence felt like a golden cage, and the lingering sting of Serena's betrayal, coupled with the revelation of her grandfather's long-held secret, ignited a new purpose within her. She now had the resources, the power, to seek justice, not just for herself, but for her parents, whose legacy Serena had so cruelly tarnished. She spent hours with Silas, poring over legal documents, historical records, and old family correspondence. Silas, who had been Harrison Vance's confidant for decades, shared stories of her grandfather's astute business acumen, his unwavering moral compass, and his quiet determination. He revealed that Harrison Vance had amassed his fortune not just through shrewd investments, but by meticulously rooting out corruption in various industries, often working discreetly with authorities. Your grandfather was a man who believed in justice, Mrs. Vance, Silas said, his eyes distant. He never tolerated deceit. He would expect you to uphold those values. Alara felt a growing sense of responsibility. She wasn't just an inheritor, she was a custodian of a legacy built on integrity. She discovered that her parents, in their efforts to start a new, independent life, had indeed invested a significant portion of their modest savings in a company associated with Julian Crawford, a former business partner of her father. Serena had exploited this vulnerability, subtly mismanaging and redirecting these funds, eventually claiming them as her own through a series of fraudulent legal maneuvers after their parents' death. The more Alara learned, the clearer the picture became. Serena's actions were not just an act of spite, they were a calculated, criminal deception. Serena had worked in concert with Julian Crawford, a man known for his shadowy dealings and connections to the criminal underworld, to systematically defraud Alara and steal her rightful inheritance. The comfortable, isolated existence at Blackwood Manor began to feel too safe, too passive. Alara knew she couldn't simply hide away in luxury while Serena and Julian walked free, profiting from their deceit. Her children deserved to see that justice prevailed. Her parents deserved to have their names cleared, their legacy protected. A steel resolve hardened within Alara. She was no longer the vulnerable widow, cast out into the cold. She was Alara Vance, granddaughter of Harrison Vance, heiress to a legacy of strength and integrity. She had been given not just wealth, but an opportunity to fight, an opportunity to reclaim what was hers, and to ensure that Serena and Julian faced the full consequences of their treachery. The battle was far from over. It was only just beginning. The opulent tranquility of Blackwood Manor, once a balm for Alara Vance's shattered spirit, now felt like a gilded cage. While her children, Leo, Maya, and Chloe, thrived in the nurturing embrace of Agnes and the vast, liberating spaces of the estate, Alara felt a growing urgency. The revelations about Harrison Vance, her enigmatic grandfather, and the chilling truth behind Serena Thorne's betrayal had ignited a fiery resolve within her. She was no longer content to simply exist. She needed to act. Justice, not just comfort, became her driving force. Her initial investigations, guided by Silas, focused on unraveling the tangled web of financial deception Serena had woven. Silas, with his quiet efficiency and vast network of contacts from his decades serving Harrison Vance, proved to be an invaluable ally. He introduced Alara to a discreet but highly effective private investigation firm in New York City, known for its expertise in white-collar crime and asset recovery. The head of the firm, Eleanor Ellie Green, a formidable woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper legal mind, immediately recognized the gravity of Alara's case. Your sister, Serena, is a master manipulator, Mrs. Vance. Ellie explained during their first clandestine meeting in a nondescript office building overlooking Central Park. She exploited your grief, your trust, and her own pre-existing knowledge of your parents' financial vulnerabilities. The paper trail she left is deliberately convoluted, designed to make it look like legitimate transfers and unfortunate losses. Ellie's team began to meticulously reconstruct the financial transactions following Alara's parents' deaths. They quickly confirmed Alara's suspicions Serena had not merely taken advantage of a loophole, she had engaged in outright fraud. They uncovered a series of shell corporations, created just weeks before her parents' accident, through which Serena had systematically siphoned off their liquid assets and properties. The crucial piece of the puzzle, however, was the involvement of Julian Crawford. Julian Crawford, Ellie stated, pointing to a complex flowchart on her screen. He's the true architect of this scheme. He was a disgruntled former business partner of your father's. Alara, your father, Arthur Vance, had terminated their partnership years ago due to Crawford's unethical practices. Crawford carried a significant grudge. He saw an opportunity to not only get revenge on your family, but also to line his own pockets by leveraging Serena's greed and ambition. The revelation solidified Alara's understanding of the depth of the betrayal. It wasn't just Serena's individual malice. It was a cold, calculated conspiracy. Julian Crawford, a shadowy figure known for his connections to various illicit ventures, had provided the sophisticated financial mechanisms for Serena's deception. He had orchestrated the legal maneuvers, the forged documents, and the rapid liquidation of assets that had left Alara utterly destitute. Ellie's team also discovered a significant, long-forgotten asset, a secret trust fund established by Alara's great-grandmother, intended solely for the direct female line of the Vance family. This fund, untouched for decades, was colossal, meticulously managed, and entirely unknown to Serena. It was this trust that Harrison Vance had subtly alluded to in his will, ensuring that Alara, as the rightful heir, would ultimately gain access to it. Serena, blinded by her focus on their parents' more accessible assets, had completely overlooked it. This discovery provided Alara with a powerful weapon, undeniable proof of Serena's fraud, and access to immense resources that could fund her fight for justice. As Alara delved deeper, she realized that Crawford's motives extended beyond mere revenge and financial gain. He was actively trying to acquire several of her family's historically significant properties, hidden within the complex web of the great-grandmother's trust. These properties, particularly an old industrial complex in a strategic part of New Jersey, were rumored to hold significant historical artifacts and possibly unrecorded mineral rights. Crawford seemed desperate to gain control of them, hinting at a larger, more sinister agenda. Back at Blackwood Manor, Alara began to train. With Silas's quiet encouragement, she immersed herself in self-defense, learning tactical maneuvers and hand-to-hand combat from a former Special Forces instructor Silas had personally vetted. She needed to be physically capable, not just mentally prepared. She spent hours in the Manor's private gym, pushing her body to its limits, transforming her grief and anger into disciplined strength. She also honed her strategic thinking, studying case law, financial fraud precedents, and the art of negotiation. She was preparing for a battle, not just a legal dispute. The children, oblivious to the deeper machinations, flourished. Leo, now with a tutor and access to an extensive library, devoured books on history and strategy, unknowingly mirroring his mother's own burgeoning interests. Maya's artistic talents blossomed, her vibrant paintings filling the Manor's art studio. Chloe, with Agnes's gentle care, became a confident, joyful child, her laughter a constant source of light for Alara. One evening, Silas approached Alara, his face uncharacteristically grim. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice low, "I have received disturbing intelligence. Julian Crawford has become aware of your investigations. He suspects you are actively working against him. He has engaged certain individuals to monitor your movements." Alara's jaw tightened. She had expected this. Crawford was a cornered animal. What kind of individuals? Silas. "Professional. Clandestine," Silas replied, his eyes dark. "They operate outside the law. They are known for their persuasive methods." He paused, then added, "Your safety, and more importantly, the children's safety, is paramount. We must be exceptionally careful." The threat was real, palpable. Serena, driven by panic, had revealed enough to Crawford to put Alara and her children in direct danger. But Alara refused to be intimidated. She had come too far. She had too much to lose. She had discovered the truth about her parents, about her grandfather's unwavering belief in her, and about the deep-seated corruption that had shadowed her family's legacy. She decided to escalate her own offensive. Her goal was no longer merely to expose Serena and Crawford. It was to dismantle Crawford's entire illicit network, to ensure he could never prey on another innocent family. She instructed Ellie Green to prepare a comprehensive legal dossier, meticulously detailing all of Crawford's financial crimes, his fraudulent activities, and his direct involvement in defrauding her family. This dossier would be delivered to the highest levels of the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission. But before she unleashed the legal storm, Alara planned a public confrontation. She would use the very platform Serena thrived on the high society circuit of New York City to expose her sister's true nature. She would strike at Serena's most cherished possession, her reputation. This was not just about money. It was about pride, about vengeance, about reclaiming her dignity. The perfect opportunity arose an exclusive charity gala hosted by one of the city's most influential philanthropic organizations, an event Serena would undoubtedly attend, flaunting her ill-gotten wealth. It was time to step out of the shadows of Blackwood Manor and into the glittering, treacherous spotlight of the elite. Elara Vance, once a grieving widow banished to a garage, was about to make her grand, and utterly devastating, return. She was ready for the fight, armed with truth, power, and an unshakable will to win. The air at the Metropolitan Museum of Art's annual Winter Charity Gala crackled with the brittle energy of New York City's elite. Crystal chandeliers dripped diamonds of light onto a mosaic of designer gowns and bespoke suits. The faint scent of expensive perfume, old money, and ruthless ambition hung heavy in the opulent space. This was Serena Thorne's natural habitat, a world of carefully constructed facades and whispered judgments. She floated through the crowd, a vision in emerald green, her laughter tinkling, unaware that the predator she sought to avoid was now meticulously stalking her. Elara Vance, once a phantom in this gilded realm, made her entrance precisely at the peak of the evening. She arrived not in a grand flourish, but with a quiet, undeniable presence that drew eyes without seeking attention. Dressed in a sleek obsidian gown that hugged her newly toned physique, her dark hair swept up in an elegant chignon, Elara exuded an aura of calm power. Her grief had been transmuted into resilience, her past suffering into a fierce, unwavering determination. She was no longer the vulnerable widow. She was the rightful heiress, armed with truth and backed by the formidable resources of Blackwood Manor. By her side, Silas moved with the quiet grace of a seasoned sentinel. He was dressed in an impeccably tailored tuxedo, his presence both reassuring and subtly intimidating. A silent promise of unseen forces at Elara's command. Elara's gaze swept across the ballroom, bypassing the usual suspects of old wealth and new money, settling instead on Serena. Her sister was holding court near a towering Grecian sculpture, her face alight with artificial charm as she captivated a small circle of influential socialites. Next to her, Julian Crawford lurked, his eyes constantly scanning the room, his smile a thin, calculating line. He was less flashy than Serena, but his presence radiated a dangerous cunning. Elara felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. This was it. The public confrontation. The first strike. She moved through the crowd with deliberate grace, accepting polite nods and veiled curiosity. Her sudden re-emergence into high society, particularly in such a striking transformation, had already begun to generate whispers. Serena, who had spread rumors of Elara's poverty and mental instability, was clearly caught off guard by her sister's polished appearance. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Serena's smile faltered, her perfectly made-up face paling. Disbelief, then a flash of pure hatred, contorted her features. Julian Crawford, observing Serena's sudden rigidity, followed her gaze, and his own eyes narrowed in cold recognition. The hunter had become the hunted. Elara approached them, her pace unhurried, her expression serene. The background murmur of the gala faded as she drew closer, the tension in the air becoming palpable. Serena! Elara's voice was soft, yet it cut through the hum of conversation like a finely honed blade. It's been a while. Serena recovered quickly, forcing a brittle smile. Elara, what a surprise. I didn't expect to see you here. I heard you were otherwise occupied. Her gaze darted to Elara's gown, then to Silas, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. The disdain was thinly veiled. Yes, I've been rather busy, Elara replied, her gaze unwavering, unraveling certain family matters, and discovering quite a few inconvenient truths. Her eyes flicked to Julian Crawford, who stiffened imperceptibly. Julian, ever the pragmatist, stepped forward, his voice oily. Elara, so good to see you. You're looking, well, we were so concerned after everything. Elara's smile was thin, edged with steel. I'm sure you were, Julian, particularly concerned about the consequences of your actions. Serena's eyes darted nervously between Elara and Crawford. What is she talking about? Julian, Elara, you're making a scene. This isn't the place. Oh, I think it's precisely the place. Serena, Elara said, her voice rising just enough to capture the attention of those around them. This is a place where appearances matter, a place where deceit can thrive. And it's time to expose the truth about how you and Julian Crawford conspired to defraud my parents, to steal their legacy, and to drive me and my children into destitution." A collective gasp rippled through the small group of socialites, their conversations abruptly ceasing. Heads began to turn. Serena's face drained of color, her eyes wide with panic. Julian Crawford's composure finally cracked. His face hardened, his hand subtly drifting towards his pocket. "How dare you!" Alara Serena shrieked, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "You're delusional. You're just trying to ruin my reputation. Your reputation was ruined the moment you kicked me and my children into a cold garage on Christmas Eve." "Serena," Alara retorted, her voice clear and cutting, carrying across the stunned silence of the ballroom. "And you did it, Julian, with a fraudulent power of attorney, with forged documents, and with a carefully orchestrated scheme to siphon off my parents' assets into shell corporations you controlled." She pulled out a small, sleek tablet from her clutch bag. With a tap, a holographic projection shimmered into existence above the device, displaying a complex web of financial transactions, clearly marked with dates, amounts, and the names of Serena Thorne and Julian Crawford, linked to various offshore accounts. The data was irrefutable, undeniable. "This," Alara announced, her voice resonating with authority, "is just a glimpse of the forensic audit conducted by Eleanor Green's firm. It details every fraudulent transfer, every laundered dollar, every piece of the inheritance you stole." Her gaze swept across the stunned faces of the onlookers. My parents believed in honesty. They would be horrified by this betrayal. Panic flared in Serena's eyes. She lunged at Alara, attempting to snatch the tablet, but Silas, with a movement too swift for the eye to follow, intercepted her, his grip firm on her arm. Julian Crawford, seeing his carefully constructed empire crumbling, made his move. He pulled a small, concealed firearm from his jacket and pointed it directly at Alara. The gasp that swept through the ballroom was almost deafening. The festive chatter evaporated into a terrified silence. "You've made a grave mistake, Alara," Crawford hissed, his face a mask of cold fury. "You should have stayed in the garage." Alara didn't flinch. Her training with Silas had prepared her for this. Her eyes met Crawford's, resolute and unyielding. "I refuse to be intimidated. Julian, you're a coward and a thief, and this charade ends tonight." Just as Crawford's finger tightened on the trigger, a series of rapid events unfolded. Silas, anticipating the move, had already alerted his discreet security team, strategically placed throughout the gala. Simultaneously, FBI agent Harding, who had been working closely with Ellie Green on the larger investigation into Crawford's criminal network, stepped out of the crowd, his badge clearly displayed. "Julian Crawford." Agent Harding's voice boomed, cutting through the stunned silence. "Drop the weapon. You are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder." Crawford, momentarily distracted by the sudden appearance of law enforcement, hesitated. This brief window was all Silas needed. With a lightning-fast maneuver, he disarmed Crawford, twisting the weapon out of his hand and sending it skittering across the marble floor. Within seconds, a team of plainclothes FBI agents swarmed Crawford, cuffing him with brutal efficiency. Serena, witnessing Julian's capture, let out a terrified sob. She tried to flee, but two other agents swiftly moved to apprehend her. Serena Thorne, an agent, stated, "You are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." The opulent ballroom, once a symbol of their power, had become the scene of their public downfall. The stunned socialites watched in disbelief as Serena, her face streaked with tears and smeared makeup, was led away in handcuffs, screaming Alara's name in a mix of fury and despair. Alara stood tall amidst the chaos, her tablet still projecting the damning evidence. She looked at the faces around her, shock, whispered questions, dawning comprehension. The truth, raw and undeniable, was now exposed. Agent Harding approached Alara, a nod of respect in his eyes. "Excellent work, Mrs. Vance. Your evidence was critical. Crawford's network runs deep, but this public exposure and his attempted murder will seal his fate. And your sister's." Alara felt a profound sense of satisfaction, a cold, sweet taste of victory. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about proving to herself, and to the world, that integrity and resilience could triumph over greed and corruption. She had faced her demons, confronted her betrayers, and emerged victorious. The whispers around her intensified, not of scorn, but of awe. The woman who had been kicked into a garage, the grieving widow dismissed as broken, had returned as a force to be reckoned with. The fight was far from over, but the most crucial battle had been won. Alara Vance had reclaimed her dignity, her legacy, and her rightful place in the world. And with Julian Crawford and Serena Thorne finally facing justice, she could begin to build a new future for her children, one free from shadows and deceit. The aftermath of the gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art was a maelstrom of media frenzy and legal maneuvers. News of Julian Crawford's arrest and Serena Thorne's public downfall spread like wildfire across New York City, dominating headlines and social media. The image of Serena, dragged away in handcuffs, screaming Alara Vance's name, became a symbol of poetic justice. But for Alara, the battle was far from over. Julian Crawford was a dangerous man with a vast, corrupt network, and his capture, while significant, only intensified the threat. Agent Harding of the FBI, impressed by Alara's strategic prowess and the irrefutable evidence she had amassed, immediately brought her into the inner circle of the investigation. He understood that Alara was not merely a victim, but a formidable ally with a deep understanding of Crawford's tactics and the family assets he had targeted. Crawford's organization is far more extensive than we initially realized. Mrs. Vance, Agent Harding explained during a secure meeting at the FBI's regional office in Newark, New Jersey. He's involved in everything from large-scale real estate fraud to money laundering for various illicit enterprises. Your parents' assets were just a small part of his larger criminal portfolio. And those properties you mentioned, particularly the old industrial complex in Trenton, they're central to his operations. He was trying to acquire them for a very specific, illegal purpose. Alara's mind raced. The industrial complex, her great-grandmother's trust. It was clear now why Crawford had been so desperate to control those properties. What purpose? Agent Harding. Human trafficking. Mrs. Vance, Harding stated grimly. He was planning to repurpose the complex as a hub for illegal operations, a major transit point. The historical artifacts you mentioned are a red herring. He's a monster. A cold wave of horror washed over Alara. The sheer depravity of Crawford's true intentions solidified her resolve. This was no longer just about reclaiming her inheritance or punishing her sister. This was about dismantling a criminal enterprise that preyed on the most vulnerable. Meanwhile, back at Blackwood Manor, Silas and Agnes were on high alert. The mansion, once a sanctuary, had become a fortress. Silas had expanded the security detail, bringing in more highly trained operatives, former Special Forces and intelligence officers, to patrol the perimeter and monitor all ingress and egress points. The children, Leo, Maya, and Chloe, were kept under constant, discreet surveillance, their movements carefully managed. The threat from Crawford's remaining associates was palpable. They were desperate, cornered animals, and they would do anything to protect their crumbling empire and to silence Alara, the woman who had exposed them. Anonymous threats, thinly veiled warnings, began to filter through secure channels, targeting Alara and, more chillingly, her children. One afternoon, a drone, silent and almost invisible, was detected hovering over Blackwood Manor, its sophisticated camera meticulously mapping the estate. Silas's security team immediately scrambled the device, but the message was clear. Crawford's people knew where Alara was, and they were planning their next move. Alara knew she needed to strike preemptively. She couldn't wait for Crawford's network to consolidate or retaliate. She needed to deliver a crippling blow to his operations, specifically targeting the Trenton Industrial Complex, which was now confirmed to be the heart of his illicit activities. She collaborated with Agent Harding and Ellie Green, formulating a daring plan that would leverage her intimate knowledge of her family's properties and Crawford's modus operandi. The plan was audacious, risky, and meticulously detailed. Alara, with the FBI's tactical support, would lead a covert infiltration of the Trenton complex. Her objective to activate a hidden security system within the ancient building, that her great-grandmother had installed decades ago. This system, designed to protect valuable artifacts, was linked to a deep subterranean vault and, crucially, to a historical data archive containing vital, unencrypted financial records that could implicate Crawford's entire network, and potentially expose his high-ranking collaborators within law enforcement and government. This is incredibly dangerous. Mrs. Vance, Agent Harding warned, his brow furrowed. Crawford's people are heavily armed. They won't hesitate to use lethal force. I understand the risks, Agent, Alara replied, her voice firm, her eyes resolute. But I know that building better than anyone. My father taught me every secret passage, every hidden nook, and this is my family's legacy. I won't let it be defiled by a criminal like Crawford. Silas, despite his profound concern, supported her decision. He believed in Alara's ability, her courage, and the unwavering conviction of her purpose. He assembled a small elite team of his most trusted operatives, trained in stealth and infiltration, to accompany Alara. The operation was scheduled for a moonless night, cloaked in the thick blanket of darkness. Alara, dressed in dark tactical gear, her movements agile and silent, led the team through the labyrinthine alleys of the old industrial complex. The air was thick with the scent of damp concrete and decay. She felt a strange connection to her ancestors as she navigated the familiar corridors, remembering her father's lessons, his gentle hand pointing out hidden access points, forgotten blueprints. Inside, the complex was a hive of illicit activity. She could hear hushed voices, the clatter of machinery, and the distant rumble of trucks. Crawford's men, rough and heavily armed, patrolled the perimeter. Alara's team moved like ghosts, bypassing security cameras and tripwires, relying on Alara's uncanny familiarity with the building's hidden passages. They reached the designated control room, a reinforced bunker deep within the complex. Alara's heart pounded, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She carefully activated the ancient, complex mechanism, a combination of levers and biometric scans, that her great-grandmother had ingeniously designed. With a low hum, heavy steel doors retracted, revealing the subterranean vault and its network of servers. As the vault opened, a sudden piercing alarm blared through the complex. Crawford's men, alerted to the intrusion, stormed the control room. Alara's team immediately engaged them, a brutal, close-quarters combat erupting in the dim light. Gunshots echoed, fists connected with bone, the clang of metal against metal filling the air. Alara, despite the chaos, remained focused. She accessed the main server, a relic of early digital technology, but still functional. She initiated the data transfer, uploading the incriminating financial records and communication logs to a secure satellite link, beaming them directly to Agent Harding's command center. The data was vast, overwhelming, containing decades of Crawford's illicit dealings and implicating dozens of high-ranking individuals in his corrupt network. Suddenly, a massive figure, one of Crawford's most brutal enforcers, burst through the door, his eyes fixed on Alara. He was a mountain of a man, wielding a heavy pipe, his face contorted with savage intent. He charged, a roaring beast determined to silence her. Alara, drawing upon her rigorous training, didn't hesitate. She dodged his initial swing, the pipe whistling past her ear. Her movements were fluid, precise. She used his momentum against him, striking with a calculated kick to his knee, then a swift, powerful blow to his solar plexus. The enforcer grunted, stumbling back. But he was resilient. He roared again, swinging the pipe with renewed ferocity. Silas, who had been covering their flank, saw the danger. He intercepted the enforcer, engaging him in a brutal hand-to-hand combat. Silas, though older, fought with the seasoned skill of a veteran, his movements economical, precise. He was a force to be reckoned with, a silent guardian who had always protected the Vance legacy. As the fight raged, Alara completed the data transfer. A triumphant ping echoed through her earpiece data received. Operation complete. Just then, a voice, chillingly familiar, cut through the din. Well, Alara, You always were a stubborn little thing. Julian Crawford, his face bruised from his recent arrest but his eyes still burning with cold malice, emerged from a hidden passage. He had somehow managed to escape temporary custody, likely with the help of his corrupted contacts, and come directly to the complex, anticipating Alara's move. He was armed with a larger firearm, his hand steady. "You won't get away with this, Alara," Crawford hissed, his gaze fixed on her. "You think you've won? I'll burn this entire place to the ground before you get to use anything against me." He raised his weapon, aiming directly at the main server, intending to destroy the evidence. Alara reacted instantly. She moved with a speed that surprised even herself, tackling Crawford just as he fired. The shot went wide, embedding itself in the steel wall behind them. A fierce struggle ensued, Alara using every ounce of her strength and training to disarm him. She slammed his hand against the wall, forcing the weapon from his grasp. It clattered to the floor, far out of reach. Crawford roared in frustration, his face inches from hers. "You underestimate me, little girl." "No, Julian," Alara retorted, her voice hard, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. "You underestimated me. You underestimated the Vance family. And you underestimated the power of true justice." With a final, decisive move, she delivered a powerful knee to his abdomen, sending him crumpling to the floor, gasping for air. Just then, sirens wailed in the distance, growing rapidly louder. Agent Harding and a full tactical unit of the FBI stormed the complex, having received the data and realizing the escalating danger. They quickly secured the area, apprehending the remaining enforcers and taking the battered Julian Crawford into custody once more. Agent Harding looked at Alara, a profound respect in his eyes. "You did it. Mrs. Vance, you brought down his entire operation. This will put him away for good. And many of his collaborators, too." Alara stood amidst the controlled chaos, her body aching, but her spirit soaring. She had faced the monster, fought through the shadows, and emerged victorious. The old industrial complex, once a symbol of her family's forgotten past and Crawford's illicit future, would now be cleansed, a testament to the power of unwavering resolve. The full weight of the legal system would now bear down on Julian Crawford and his entire criminal network, ensuring that the justice her parents deserved, and the peace her children deserved, would finally be absolute. The dawn that broke over Blackwood Manor the day after the raid on the Trenton Industrial Complex was different. It was not just the soft glow of a new morning, it was the radiant light of a new beginning. Julian Crawford was securely in federal custody, his vast criminal empire irrevocably shattered. The evidence gathered by Alara Vance and Agent Harding was irrefutable, ensuring that Crawford, along with his numerous high-ranking collaborators, would face the full wrath of the law. Serena Thorne, implicated in the conspiracy and facing charges of fraud and embezzlement, was also in custody, her once glittering life reduced to a pathetic spectacle of public disgrace. The weight that had pressed down on Alara's shoulders for so long finally lifted. She watched her children Leo, Maya, and Chloe playing in the vast sun-drenched gardens of the manor, their laughter echoing freely, unburdened by the shadows of the past. They were truly safe, truly free. Over the next few months, the legal proceedings unfolded with remarkable speed. Driven by the overwhelming evidence and Alara's unwavering cooperation with the FBI and the Department of Justice, Crawford's trial was swift and decisive, faced with a mountain of incriminating data, witness testimonies, and Alara's direct involvement in securing the critical evidence. He pleaded guilty to multiple counts of racketeering, money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. He received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, a just end for a man who had preyed on so many, including Alara's parents. Serena's trial was less dramatic but equally impactful. Her fraudulent activities were meticulously laid bare, and her callous betrayal of her own sister was exposed to the world. She received a significant prison sentence, stripped of all her ill-gotten gains and her once revered social standing. The luxurious life she had so desperately coveted lay in ruins, a direct consequence of her greed and malice. With the legal battles behind them, Alara turned her attention to rebuilding. The Vance family legacy, which had been so brutally tarnished by Serena and Crawford, was now fully restored. The great-grandmother's trust, a colossal fortune that had silently protected her family for decades, was now under Ilara's complete control. She was no longer just an heiress. She was a steward of a profound responsibility, a guardian of a heritage built on integrity and foresight. Ilara chose to honor her grandfather, Harrison Vance, and his unwavering belief in justice. She established the Vance Foundation for Economic Justice, dedicating a significant portion of her wealth and resources to fighting white-collar crime and assisting families who had been victims of financial fraud. The Trenton Industrial Complex, once a hub of Crawford's dark enterprises, was transformed into the Foundation's headquarters, a symbol of redemption and hope. It would house legal clinics, investigative units, and support services for those seeking justice against corporate predators. Silas, ever the loyal confidant, became the Foundation's chief operating officer, his decades of experience and unwavering moral compass proving invaluable. Agnes, with her compassionate heart and practical wisdom, oversaw the administrative aspects of the manor, ensuring that Blackwood remained a loving and stable home for Ilara and her children. Life at Blackwood Manor settled into a new, harmonious rhythm. The children thrived in an environment of security and boundless opportunity. Leo, inspired by his mother's tenacity and his great-grandfather's legacy, spent hours in the manor's library, devouring books on law and forensic accounting, his sharp mind already showing a keen interest in justice. Maya, with access to the finest art instructors and materials, blossomed into a prodigious young artist, her vibrant paintings reflecting the joy and serenity she had found. Chloe, the youngest, was a ray of sunshine, her infectious laughter filling the grand halls, a testament to the healing power of love and stability. Ilara herself found profound fulfillment not in the lavishness of her surroundings, but in her renewed purpose. She remained grounded, her past struggles serving as a constant reminder of the vulnerability of others. She championed causes, spoke at conferences, and worked tirelessly with law enforcement agencies to refine strategies for combating complex financial crimes. She became a formidable force in the fight for justice, earning the respect and admiration of those in the legal and financial worlds, a stark contrast to the dismissive whispers she had once endured. She occasionally received reports about Serena, stripped of her luxuries, her vanity, and her freedom. Serena slowly faded into obscurity within the prison system. Her cruelty had consumed her, leaving her with nothing but the bitter taste of her own destructive choices. Ilara felt no triumph, only a quiet sadness for the sister she had lost to greed. One crisp autumn evening, Ilara sat on the grand veranda of Blackwood Manor, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. Her children were inside, their cheerful voices drifting through the open windows. Silas joined her, a respectful distance away. "You've built something truly remarkable, Mrs. Vance," Silas said, his voice filled with pride. "Mr. Vance would be incredibly proud. He always believed in your strength, even when you didn't see it yourself." Ilara smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile that reached her eyes. "He gave me a chance, Silas. He gave me the means to find my own strength and to fight for what's right." She looked out at the sprawling estate, then back at the majestic manor, no longer a symbol of inherited wealth, but a sanctuary of purpose. "This isn't just a house, Silas. It's a home, a place where justice begins and where a family can truly heal." The limousine, the symbol of her sudden deliverance, had truly marked a turning point. It had carried her from the darkest hour of her life into a new dawn, not just of wealth, but of profound meaning. Ilara Vance, once abandoned and broken, had risen from the ashes of betrayal, forged by adversity, and emerged as a beacon of justice and a testament to the indomitable spirit of a mother's love. Her story was not just about survival, it was about triumph, about reclaiming dignity, and about building a legacy far more valuable than any fortune.